This is Sharita Thompson here for another Parent Epiphany webinar. Today's topic is financial literacy for young children, and we have a guest expert today. I'm so happy. He will introduce himself, but I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and I'm really excited about this topic, especially since I have a 3-year-old and a toddler. I actually have 2 walking toddlers at home now. So think of me, send good thoughts our way. It is a busy household, but take it away, Sam. Please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Sam X Renick, or as kids like to call me, Sam, the money man. And anyways, thanks. And thank you, Sharita. Thank you for having me here today to talk about a subject that I'm extraordinarily passionate and energetic about, and that's kids and money. And that's why we created Sammy Rabbit to help make it easy or easier for parents, for teachers, for community leaders, anyone who's interested in talking and helping kids learn good money habits.
Excellent. Thank you. So why don't you start with, why do you think this is important for children to know?
Well, okay. For lots of reasons.
Right into it.
Okay, yeah, great. For lots of reasons. I guess here's the first and foremost reason is that to have a certain amount of success in life, and let's call success reduced stress, more freedom, more choices, learning to manage money is going to be essential to that process and that success. Almost everything we do throughout the day, from the moment we wake up, in some way or another relates to money. So let's just go through that for a second. We're sleeping in bed. We may or may not be warm. Maybe we're not even sleeping in a bed. That somewhat relates to a financial choice. We wake up. Let's say we go and we brush our teeth. There's a toothbrush. There's toothpaste. There's finances involved in that. Maybe we take a shower. We turn on the water. Do we turn on the hot water or the cold water? Do we turn on water at all? Do we use a general soap? Do we use a perfumed soap? Shampoos? Let's say we're done with that now and we want to have a glass of water, or we want to have a cup of coffee, or we want something to eat. Finances are involved in that. Let's say if we get up and we're going to go out and we're going to go to work, that's in the pre-COVID world, or we're just at home, but let's pretend we were driving somewhere to work. You get in an automobile, whether you paid it off, you haven't paid it off, whether you're carrying interest, that relates to finances and money. If you have to stop and put gas in it, that relates to finances and money. It also goes into taxation, particularly here in California. I've noticed in traveling around the country, gas is roughly, on average about $1 per gallon more expensive in California. That has a lot to do with the way it's taxed. And so there's tax lessons. Then you're going to a job. I'm presuming you're going there and they're paying you to be there. So there's issues there related. Do you bring your lunch? Do you eat lunch out? So finances are involved in everything. Now, if you take a look at the external environment, kids are receiving a lot of messages related to money, whether we're aware of it or not. First and foremost, they're coming from the parents. It's whether we're talking directly about money or different things like, oh, I want to go on a trip somewhere. So you don't use the word money, but that implies that there's going to be some money or financial transaction. My main point is we're communicating both orally through audio and maybe visually how we feel about it. Oh my goodness, I can't pay the bills. What am I going to do? Kids, from the moment they're born, and some studies even say maybe from in the womb, they're learning machines. And so they're picking up all these signals, both visually and orally, about how their parents feel about money, how they think about money, what their attitudes are about money. And they're forming these little neural networks. Think of their brains like little computers, making these attachments, making these associations. So they're picking up on this. Now you add other layers of exposure, television, video games, radio, extended family members that are all communicating messages in one form or another, maybe related to money. Now, the more that a child is exposed to, let's say, television, there's a great chance that, in maybe it's 95 or 98% of the messages that they're going to be receiving related to money are to consume, and not necessarily consume smartly, just to consume, and it's reinforcing immediate gratification and things of that nature. So all this is being built in to kids' software, their minds, and it's not only their minds, their brains, but it's their feelings, their attitudes, the associations they're making. So I think it's important because almost every parent I know, they want their child to be successful, and so it's going to be hard to have any measure of success. And I'm not talking about Bill Gates' success. I'm just talking about own your own home, sleep in the bed and be able to turn the heat on, or with the blankets that you want, be able to eat the way you want, be able to be educated you want. That's what being able to manage money means. It means you have more freedom. It means you have more security. It means you have more peace of mind, things of that nature. So I think you have to get in there early. Otherwise, what we find is happening, say if you start maybe at high school, and so there's, a lot of financial education going on at high school. There needs to be a lot more, let me say that. But kids, by the time they're 13 to 17, they already knowingly, but probably unknowingly, have a lot of attitudes, feelings, associations, and maybe even a little bit of thinking, critical thinking, the best kind of thinking, already baked in. So what you're talking about largely is correcting what probably are poor thinking, poor habits, poor attitudes related to money. So that's kind of a long answer, but I think it's essentially comes down to you love your children and you want to position them for success, and money is one element of being able to achieve a certain level of success.
Well, one thing I love about these webinars and having guests here is really thinking about it in a different way, right? When you're talking about all the things that involve money, right? You think about gas, you think about vacations, you think about these things, and you're right. Even though it's not explicitly said, there is always money behind there. And so what messages are we putting out to our children? And so, last week we talked about mindfulness, and I think that plays into this too, right? We have to think about the way that we are talking about these things because they have greater implications than we may think that they have. So I just love these connections. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So, one of the things actually last week when Kumar was with us, we talked about parents, how we can save, how we can protect ourselves financially. And so, I think one of the first steps, what is the first step? What can we do to help our children? What is the first thing that we can do?
Well, you just really hit on it in the sentences prior to that. We need to bring more mindfulness, more intention. So the way to do that is first, as parents, is to, I'm going to say sit down, but however you do your best thinking, and maybe it's for a minute, maybe it's for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you can do, and start thinking about this question. What are my, let's call them money or financial values? What are they? Can you identify them? And then I would strongly suggest write them down, okay? And then you can keep evolving them and revising them and perfecting them. But write them down. I would try and cover the basics to begin with. And for us, the basics are have a philosophy towards saving, have a philosophy towards earning, have a philosophy towards smart spending, and have a philosophy towards giving. from a Sammy Rabbit perspective, those are the four foundational money ideas or concepts. They're at the core, and then you can go into, investing, credit, insurance, and all those other things. But you want to get those four down and just write down simple things. Am I a saver? Sharita is a saver. Our family are savers. So now you have you want to make little short messages that reflect your values that you can communicate to your kids. So then what you do is you start, whatever your philosophy is, you start articulating it, communicating it orally. And then if you're able to, the next step is put some feeling and emotion behind it. So, for example, if you have a 1, 2, or 3-year-old, you might say, we are savers. Then you take a penny in a clear jar, you drop it in, and you shake that penny and say, we love to save, or I like to save, or it's smart to save. And you form little patterns like that around your philosophy. And so I think, a lot of people don't know what their philosophy is, and able to articulate it, you need to think about it. What is it? And you just take it step by step, baby steps. And you see what's working and what's not working. What's hard with young kids is they're not able to articulate what it is that they're learning. So as a teacher, as a parent, you need to assume, I think it's a good idea to assume, that they're learning, they're absorbing things that they're hearing and things that they're seeing. And so now you pour it in. Education is a process. At least that's our thinking. So there's many layers to it. And if you're going to become good at anything, repetition is a key to mastery. Now, you may want to have different ways of reinforcing the same ideas. So I'll give you an example. It is our main mantra, is saving is a great habit. So we deliver that in stories, we deliver that in songs, we deliver that in activities. So there's a lot of ways to keep reinforcing that message and making the connection between saving money and forming the habit. And so when you think about habits and you think about success, to have success, you need consistent, focused action. And that's what habits are. Habits make it easier to have consistent action. If we walk every day or every other day, or whatever it is, 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, we're going to have better health. If we form a habit of reading in the same type of a pattern, we're going to grow our mind, our thinking, our creativity, our ability to think critically. Saving isn't every different. This is the power of habits. Habits can produce predictable results for the good or for the bad. Let's get behind those good and great, what Sammy Rabbit liked to say, are great habits. So there's a lot of simple things you can begin doing that can have powerful, life-transforming, effects. It isn't necessarily about these big aha moments. I hope you have one, or everyone has one now and then. It's more about these consistent baby steps, reinforcing them over and over, and then in different ways, and then building a village. I'm going to use that analogy around yourself of people who share your thinking and values, the ones that you're trying to instill. And when I say this village can be more than people. It can be storybooks. It can be videos. It can be a lot of different things. These are what my mom always used to say when I was growing up. And I'd wonder, well, how did you find this out? And she's like, oh, a little bird told me, a little voice. These are all little voices. It's tough. The environment makes it tough. When I see chocolate, I can refuse chocolate, let's say 100 times in a row. But on 101, I want that chocolate. and as Americans, we're great salespeople. And so they just keep coming at you in waves and waves and waves. And look, that's the environment. We want to equip our kids to be capable of navigating the environment and having success. So we start with ourselves, and we try and articulate and role model the behavior we want. And it's just like riding a bicycle. If you fall off your bicycle and you're not doing a good job of role modeling, wipe yourself off, forgive yourself, and then start back again and try it again. We all have our challenges and issues. None of us are perfect role models. We just keep trying to be a little better every day or give our best that day. And sometimes we're able to hit that mark. Sometimes we're not. What's important is not to beat ourselves up when we're not hitting the mark. What's important is to, get over it as quickly as we're able to, and then get back on track. So those are that's how I think you begin. And if you already know if you already know what your philosophy is, then you're ahead of the game. But if you don't, or maybe you kind of do internally, but you just don't know how to articulate it, start figuring it out and just keep it very simple. I am a saver. I think saving is good. I am an earner. I think earning money is good. I have lots of different ways to earn money. I have fun when I earn money. I can't wait to earn money. You know what? I love to spend, but spend smart. I like getting value for my money. I want to get the most of my money. This is another thing that I like to do. I found effective for myself as a strategy is to repeat the same idea maybe 3 or 4 different ways. Oh, Sharita, I really like saving. You know what? I really love saving. Saving is fun. Saving is great. Saving gives me power. It helps me get what I want and what I need when I want to need it. So you have a lot of different ways. And so you don't have to be afraid of, say, using big words if you can break them down. In fact, I suggest you use big words like, oh boy, one of the things I love about saving or investing money is your money will compound. It will grow. It will increase. Your pile of savings is going to go up and up and up. High five. Virtual high five.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you do in the COVID. But, these things for me, I've been doing this for 20 years. So it's a muscle. You just start building it up. On day one, you might not, remember all that stuff. But these are things, ways of talking to kids about money. When your child is ready, start having them maybe trace or color a word like save. All right, from a Sammy Rabbit standpoint, this to me is the most important behavior you can teach a child about money, and that is to make a habit of saving. And the reason why I think saving is so important has really not that much to do with money. It has to do with all the other benefits that saving teaches a child that are not related to money. Now, let me just say the money benefits are wonderful. But when you think about what's required to save, here's one of the biggest things, is it requires the ability to delay gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to share this, and this is something I'm sure every parent knows instinctually or through reading or some other form, is that if your child learns to delay gratification, you're setting them up, you're positioning them for success. Because it's hard to have success in a career, hard to have success at anything if you're not able to delay gratification and overcome difficulties and challenges. So that's one of the things saving does. Now, for little kids, maybe, it depends again on, when I say little kids, I'm talking about, anywhere from birth to, let's say, age 10. and those years, this is something I don't think a lot of people think about. When you're down at that level of age, say the difference between 1 and 2 is almost like dog years. It's like a 7-year jump. So it's not like between 21 and 22. You're growing, but it isn't that same kind of same kind of growth. So there are enormous differences even between a 6 and a 7-year-old, or a 7 and a 9-year-old. But you just keep giving them a little bit at a time, and you as the parent, you're in the best position to make the decisions in terms of what to expose your kids. But don't get disappointed. A lot of people are like, they're not learning anything because they're not able to articulate, maybe what the concept is. On the other hand, a lot of people are going to be surprised because kids are pretty darn smart. If you start projecting and thinking that they're smart, they're going to pick up on that, and often they'll surprise you. I can't tell you how many kids I've talked to, 4 or 5, that just surprised the heck out of me with some of the things. I remember talking to this one 4-year-old and asking, it was a whole group of, I think they were pre-kindergartners, why is money important? And you had your standard Chuck E. Cheese, McDonald's. Some kids didn't know. I mean, I was a little surprised even about Chuck E. Cheese. It made a lot of sense because I'm thinking Disneyland and McDonald's. That's going to be number 1 and number 2. But I was like, oh no, Chuck E. Cheese. But this one child, 4 years old, and he says, money is important for groceries and for us to get the food we need to eat. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where did he come? Not only was that baked into his thinking, but he was able to articulate it. What's happening in that house? And this goes back to the point I was making earlier, Sharita. Get yourself around other people, whether they're family members or not family members, who share your values and thinking. And then try and find people who are having the kind of success that you're wanting and emulate and adapt the strategies that they're using. Some of the strategies may not work for you. That's okay. But they may have already figured out things you're either not aware of or you're struggling to do. And you're like, once you see it, then that is the aha moment. Oh, I can do that. Or I can put the little switch on it. It's just like cooking. It's a recipe. So if you like a little more pepper, put a little more pepper in your formula for educating your kids about money.
Yes, well, and I appreciate you, mentioning not everything's going to fit for one person. You have to find out what fits for you and your family. I do have a question about, you brought up, I agree. Kids are very observant, right? They are watching everything that you're doing. And you mentioned, if your child's showing interest. So let's say your child's showing interest, you're going to start having those conversations about savings and about, right, you're going to be starting laying the foundation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at what age do you typically think they start showing interest? Do you see a certain trend, or does it really depend on the child?
Everything always depends on the child. But, okay, you're going to get more obvious signs or clues somewhere between 3 and 5. Now, having said that, I would start training myself the minute they're born, or even maybe before they're born. It's like the idea, we give kids rattles. So get a clear savings, a jar that you might put jam or whatever it's in, and make a little hole and drop a penny in there and shake the penny. Do that once every day, once every other day, and then start practicing. The Renicks, we like to save. You put a penny in, and then you shake it and have a big old grin. We like to save. That's 1 penny. Next day, that's 2. So you're training yourself, but you're also relying on this idea that I don't know what's going on in that head. My kid might be the next Einstein. They might be picking all of this. They're picking it up in some form or another. You're trying to shape, you're trying to condition and lead your child in a certain way. Now, having said all that, you can't guarantee outcomes. What you can guarantee is your parenting. And so if you think it's important and that what we've been talking about is going to be helpful in having your child more success, then these are the kind of strategies and ideas you want to try and implement and practice or adapt to your particular family. And you just keep looking for those signs and small progress. Praise small progress. So if your child gets a little grin and they can't articulate anything, hey, that's worth a clap. Or a little Sammy dance. And by the way, all my dances are off beat, off key, off off everything. But what they are on with is they're on with joy and enthusiasm. And so I'm like, hey, I know what pennies can do. I think pennies are powerful. And so, I think that's a place to start. And I think it's a place almost anybody can start. I've read in, some of the poorest areas in the United States, and I've received a lot of mail from kids after I've left those areas saying, oh, at recess, Mr. Sam, I found a penny on the ground and I'm saving, and before that, they didn't realize, that a penny was worth saving or that they could save a penny. And for me, it's all about the habits. And so pennies, if you saved a penny a day for 365 days, I'm very confident that would inform and change the way you look at money. Okay. So yeah, you'd only have $3.65. That's not what's important. What's important is it's like doing a push-up every day. You've started to lay that foundation. You're putting that groove in, and you're thinking, money is worth saving. And it's kind of saying this also. Little things can lead to bigger things and make a big difference. So there's a lot of these hidden messages. Now, so you start with sound, you start with language, and language is, it's just critically important. Even if your kids aren't picking up these ideas or concepts, or you're like, oh, I don't think they're getting it or whatever, again, rely on this idea. They're being exposed to it. And so you even if you personally, for whatever your reasons are, you're thinking, I'm not capable right now, or I can't save. Let me say, there isn't any reason why kids can't save pennies. They don't have bills. They don't have expenses. There really isn't any reason why they need to spend money. Now, if you want them to spend money, that's okay. Teach them to spend smart. But my point is, they can save money. But one of the things that makes language so tricky is words, and this is in any language, but particularly in English, one word can have multiple meanings. So the word save has like 9 or 10 meanings. What makes the word save even extra tricky when you're talking about money. So you're not saying, oh, I'm going to save, I'm going to rescue the prince or princess. You're not saying I'm going to save the game, the baseball game, or save a hockey puck from going in the goal. You're saying I'm going to save money. Well, that can mean I'm going to save, like spend less, buy something on sale, or it could mean I'm going to save, I'm going to build protection, I'm going to build safety, I'm going to build wealth, I'm going to position myself to own a home. Now, chances are kids are going to be, if they are even exposed to the word save, because if they are exposed to it, they're exposed to the word spend, let's say 1,000 times more frequently. Now, if you just look at the two types of saving related to money, there's probably a 19 out of 20 chance they're going to be indoctrinated with the idea of spend and save some money, but that money that you're saving, you spend it on something else. Okay, so it isn't saving, built. See, this is another great man. The Renicks, we're building wealth. All right, we're on the road. It's a journey for most people. We're on that path. We're going somewhere. So it's really important to start exposing kids to the language, like invest. What does that mean? I don't know, little Jane, but it's a word that gets me really excited. Invest. Oh, I heard it means to grow, to get bigger. Kids like growing and getting bigger. So there's a lot of ways to break the language down, but get them exposed to this idea. So maybe at 6 or 16 or 26, they have some fond memory saying, I remember my mom, she always wanted me to be an investor. And you know what? I'm going to be the first one or the second one or the best one in my family to be an investor or a giver or a smart spender or, whatever it is. But don't be afraid to introduce the language, but be prepared to try and explain it 2 or 3 or 4, ways if you're able to.
I like that. So one of the other things that during our conversation with Mar, I think we briefly touched on, chores, right? Like maybe parents are thinking about giving their children money for doing chores. Is that something that either you encourage or that you talk about with the children that you teach through Sammy Rabbit? What are your feelings on being paid for chores?
Okay, to me, that's a family decision. So it's like a game time call. You want to, I think, yeah, execute your own values. Now, uh, having said that, for me, I'm not big on paying for chores or allowance. All right. Now, that isn't to say that it can't work. It will work if you work it. Now, in life, there really isn't an allowance, which is one of the reasons I'm not for allowance. So what I am for is certain chores you do to contribute to the family, and what you may do is create a list of duties, activities, jobs that you pay, a dollar, 50 cents, whatever is appropriate for you. Start building that earning habit and mentality. I've interviewed a lot of people, and it's part of this. Let's emulate success. Let's find strategies that work. And I'll ask them, what did you learn from your parents about money or something related to money? And probably 6 out of 10 they'll say, "Oh, I learned to have a great work ethic." And so I'm like, wow, and I read a lot, so I do think that is an important factor in having a measure of success. And let me just say, even if you're not successful in managing money, it's still going to help you to attract and earn money. Now, that's a big thing. I just want to say, I mean, earning money is separate than managing, keeping it, getting it to grow. Mm-hmm. So just because you're a good earner doesn't mean you're a good manager, a good steward of your resources. But let me just say, even if you're not a good manager, you still want to be a good earner because it's just helpful to have more money than less money. But there's a lot of strategies that can work. That's the way I like to think of it. So allowance can work, no allowance can work, getting paid for chores or not, either any of them can work. It's the consistency you bring to implementing whatever your philosophy is. That's what's going to give you a better chance of it sticking. And what I can share with you, and I'm thinking you're probably the same way, because I think most people are similar in this way. Things my mother and father shared with me when I was a child, they're both gone now. They still circulate in my head. Those voices are still singing to me for good or bad, but a lot of it was good.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. They did the best that they could, but I will say I feel like I personally was fortunate. Now that I have more perspective, that I'm older, I realized that a lot of what they shared with me was good for me and is still good for me. But they're not perfect. Okay.
Well, and so I think you bring up a good point. My husband and I, and I'm sure a lot of parents out there, right? Like thinking about your money and savings and investment and all that stuff, it can be scary, right? Especially if you've never done it. Maybe you're not in a good position financially. And so, instilling these practices in your kids can feel really intimidating. So I appreciate the fact that you're, breaking it down, making it like really simple. And, it doesn't have to be overly complicated to instill the right practices for your children. So I really appreciate that. So even if you're maybe not necessarily making the best financial practices, let's become aware of those things, change them, and then help our children to take those right steps.
Absolutely. Whether you're doing, both of my parents smoked. I didn't smoke. All right. Okay. So there's going to be these conflicts in a variety of areas where what it is we want and know is best for our children isn't necessarily what we're doing. So we're going to have strategies to come that. So it is a challenge. But what I would encourage people is don't let the fact that you're not, perfect or maybe even close to perfect or unable for whatever your reasons are to do something to disempower your kids when you realize this is something you should be doing or they should be doing. Give them the benefit of that information, because otherwise what you're doing is you're just adding essentially to this gap that everybody talks about, the further widening of whatever it is, all these different divisions. Some of them are in the financial area, but it's always like inspiring to me when I talk to these people and find out, oh my goodness, I started off over here and now I'm over here through executing the recipe. All right. And so these core foundational behaviors that we're talking about, saving, earning, spending smart, and giving, they're the core ingredients for good outcomes. And good outcomes may be owning your own home. Maybe it's renting a home or an apartment in an area that you like, or where if you have your own kids, it's where the school system maybe is a little bit better, or maybe it's going on a vacation. I grew up hovering around the poverty level. Now, having said that, we ate every day. We never missed a meal. We had clothes. I had all my brother's clothes. I didn't have any new clothes, but I had all my brother's clothes. Once in a while I had new clothes. But heck, I forgot my point now. But my point was, one of the things my dad did that I thought was, now that I've been in this area, I just thought it was really profound of him is he didn't disempower us in any way. He always, one of his mantras or lines, it's still in my head today, is, Sam, you can have anything you want if you're willing to work hard and get an education. And I don't know why I bought into that. Now, if that doesn't work for you, try something different. But I can remember going to him many times. I wanted a soda. Soda back in the day was a dime. We don't have money for soda, Sam. So that was a different era where parents were, they were able to say no with great frequency. I'm sure it broke their hearts. It breaks everybody's hearts, but it was a muscle that they learned to use. And let me just say, as an adult, I'm glad they did, because it turns out giving your kid everything they want is not a good strategy. All right, it doesn't produce success reliably. All right, we know that there's all kinds of research and studies out there. So what was also interesting about my dad is if I was going to wash my aunt's car, he'd find a dime for soap and he'd be out there helping me to wash that car. He was building that earning, that hustle ethic, what that work hard ethic, go out there and make it happen. So I've talked to a lot of people whose circumstances were far worse than mine, even though mine weren't ideal. We had 7 people in a 2-bedroom house, 1 bathroom, 1 phone. I know that's hard to believe, 1 car. We'd all get into that car together. We had to plan trips. We'd be lucky to go 3 miles because it was it was like a major operation and that kind of thing. So things can be done, but I've met so many people who started in, not as good of a starting spot as I was in, even though it was less than ideal. And they far exceeded everything, things that I've done. I've done a certain amount, but they've gone much further because they've had the focus, the consistent action. They've aligned themselves with the right people. They've read the right books, and they're out, doing it. So my main point is there are some, it's hard, but there are some strategies and possibilities. Try and find those. That's why I tell young kids all the time, you know what? I don't know what's in your heart. I don't know what you can do. You might be the one. All right. I don't know who might. What I can do is I can share with you that this is a formula that will work for you. Making a habit of saving. It's going to reliably build up your possibilities, your security, your freedom. It's going to give you more choices. I know that because I've read a lot. I've talked to a lot of people. I've seen it happen consistently over and over. You may have to tweak it. Add a little cayenne pepper, a little salsa. Put some avocado in there. Whatever it is, but that's That's what I want to find out about you, Sharita. What can you do? What can you become? You know, and then, when that doesn't work, scratch your head, talk to your husband or your wife, and come up with a new, try it again tomorrow, something.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It isn't easy, but these are the right ideas, the right strategies. It's like making the sausage sometimes. The sausage may taste great, but nobody wants to see how it's made because so sometimes it's not made exactly. But you can make it, good. I'm talking about the educating your kids on all these various subjects, but money specifically. So don't let it intimidate you. Get in there. I mean, if it does intimidate you, it does, but take a step anyways. That's the thing. Take a step anyways.
I do have a question about, so we talked about establishing a habit, having these conversations with our children, and you mentioned media and all these things, right? Sort of outside forces that are bombarding our children with messages. And so my question is there anything more than we can do outside of having these conversations, right? Because like you said, right, on the 101 time, you're going to say yes, you're going to possibly give in because you're doing all these things. And so I'm just wondering, these outside forces can feel so strong as a parent. How do you combat it just by being one person? Do you have any feelings on that or any strategies that you can offer to our audience?
Well, I think it's a lot of what we're talking about. That's how you combat it. Then what I think you want to do is you want to make you want your kid to be capable. Okay, so you want them to know how to cross the street. That's the only way they're going to get to the other side. And so, you know what? There's a lot of things that can happen when you cross the street. And you want to teach your kid, I think, you want them to be able to cross busy streets because there may be opportunities on the other side that are going to be great for them. So you want to instill in them this capability. You can't be afraid of all these things. So you teach them, look both ways, press the button. You hold their hand the first time they do it. Then you may try and create a condition of success. You see there aren't any cars coming around, so you let them, go by yourself, walk now. Or then you say, you see there's a car, 200 yards away or something, and you have them cross because they're not in danger. But now they're crossing with, they see that there's a car. So you that's what you try and do. You just keep bringing as much intentional energy and effort, giving them ideas, giving them experiences that are going to help position them to have more success. So like with television and all that, look, here's a big factor, or their cell phones or computers. All the studies say, like kids may watch, 40 or 50 hours of television, a week. Reduce or monitor that exposure. Make sure that it isn't filled with a lot of commercials or things of that nature. Sometimes that's going to mean having to say, no, or you can watch this program or that program. That's part of what responsible parenting, is about. So I think it's things like that, and then allowing room, for failure. Failure, we can learn often, in fact, maybe frequently, we can learn more from failures than we can from successes. So we do want to praise success and bring a celebration to that. And we want to turn failure into learning moments and the chance to keep progressing, to keep chipping, to keep moving forward. Whether it's a baby step, 7 steps, 2 steps, 4 steps, and we take a step backward, we get back on that bike, we try it again. We may get bruised up, we may get knocked down, we may get a black eye. What we know as adults is we can transcend those moments. And so, you know what? It just takes continual reinforcement, encouragement. Now, as a parent, you just have to give it as much energy as you're able to in a particular moment, a particular day, a particular week, a particular month, and do the same for yourself. If if you're not as good one day or 1 week as the next, try and course correct, get back on, and just keep chipping a little bit. You figure out your rhythm, what you can do. If it's once a day, once a week, once a month, do that, build the habit, and then try and increase it a little bit. This is another powerful thing about habits. If you start walking a block a day, pretty soon you're gonna, I think I can walk 2 or 1.5. Slowly build. If you sustain that over a 5-year, 10-year, or 15-year period, you're gonna have impact. So there's lots of ways. Just you keep searching it out. It's giving attention and energy to it. Right now, what a lot of people don't realize, parents in particular, but this could be even educators and experts, is financial education is going on all the time, but most of it is not intentional. We're talking about the bills. We're freaking out because we lost our job or whatever it is. That's having an impact on our kids. You can't hide it. We know that from our own experiences. I know that, when we were under stress as a family and all of that stuff when I was growing up as a kid, that was part of my motivation to want to be a saver and an investor and a builder. First of all, I wanted to have my own independence, but I also wanted to help my family achieve that. So those are some ideas.
Sorry about that. I had something in my throat, but
okay, stay with us, Serena.
Well, you bring up a good you bring up a question for me. So, one of the things that we talked about again last week was savings and for us, right? Insurance, life insurance, and things of that nature. So how much do you bring your child into? I mean, sometimes we want to protect our children. We don't want them to know everything. But I also feel like maybe we're doing a disservice by not talking to them. So we talked about the 529 college fund and things like that. Is it okay at 3 years old to let your child know that you're planning on saving money for their college education? And I guess maybe that's up to the individual parent. Do you pick and choose what you feel comfortable talking to your children about? I'm curious about your ideas on that.
Well, absolutely. It's up to every parent to make that determination. The parents are in the best position to make that determination. So that's why, that's one reason why they should make it. No one knows more about what is going on in their home or the development of their children, than the parent themselves, whatever it is, 98% of the time or 95. So they should make that call. Now, having said that, education is a process. So you should use diligence about what it is you are disclosing. So you may not say, hey, we make a lot of money, $250,000, we're rich. But if you stick with, say, basic ideas like saving, it's good to save. We are savers. That's great information. Kids should be aware of that. When they're ready, get them involved in paying bills. Get them involved in grocery shopping. We're smart spenders, things of that nature. Insurance is about protection. So, a way to talk about it, maybe you have a $10 million insurance policy. So maybe you don't share, you have $10 million with your child, but you're like, there's nothing to worry about. We're all protected. Why? Because Sharita believes in being prepared and in planning and, making sure that you're protected. Nothing is more important to me than that. You're protected. But at some point, remember this, little Sharita, you're going to need to make your own way. Okay. So I'm only protecting you up to a certain point, but that's your decision. Maybe you want to protect them all the way through their lives. That's your call. But the other thing I think, say, around these issues, there's groups for everything. And I think this would be a great idea. Maybe you're already a part of a mothering or a parenting group. form a discussion within that group about money and how to approach it, or how would you approach this subject, Sharita? This is something I want to talk to my child about, but I'm not sure how to go about it. What would you do? Now, the only thing you as a parent have to be careful about there is make sure you're aligning up with other people who share your values, and then also remember this: if somebody suggests something that you don't agree with, you don't have to do it. Okay.
Right.
It's that simple. What I've learned to say is thank you, and then just move on to the next thought or idea or whatever it is. You don't have to get into an explanation. You don't have to. I mean, you can if you want to. Like, you know what? That I don't think that's really right for us. I see what you're saying, Sharita, and I see why it's working for you. And you know what? I really appreciate you for sharing it with me. That's something I'm going to think about. That's another. So there's a lot of ways, but you don't have to. You don't have to do it. When you make a connection online, you can always unconnect. It's not a permanent lifetime thing. So this is another. You just remind me of another good point. The more, if you're in a partnership, a relationship, the more you can get on the same page with your partner, the better chances you're going to have for success as a family unit and for educating your kids, because you're going to be, it isn't rocket science. You're going to be moving largely in the same direction, so that's going to produce better results, so a lot of people don't, they're so afraid of, it's not only fear of talking about money, but it's the mindfulness issue. It's the awakening. Like, you know what? We probably shouldn't be going to Disneyland. We don't have a college fund. All right. So let me just say, if you want to go to Disneyland and you have the resources, or maybe you don't have the resources, but you can charge it, that's your call. That's your choice. But these are the choices we make. And so I think, this is just my opinion. I think a child, when they're 21, 18, 32, they're going to be really glad you started saving up for college. if that's what see, it's these small choices done consistently that make a difference. Not only whether, say, kids go to college or own homes, but what it is that they're thinking. This is how they know. We've thought about this. We'd love to go to Disneyland, but you know what? What we'd love more is for you to go to college. And so right now, this might change in a week or a month, but right now our thinking is we're gonna start this fund, or we're gonna add a little extra into it. We want you to have a great future. And so, you know what? Right now it's hard. Maybe we'll watch a movie. That's something we can do as a family. So you have options, and then put yourself. You already have a good idea who supports your thinking. Oh, let's go visit Auntie, Auntie Blanca, and have watch a movie and watch popcorn. Let's watch a Disney movie over there, and see if they'll reinforce. Give them a little call. This is what's happening. Little Johnny's having a problem because we're not going to Disneyland or whatever. There's a lot of people. I think you need to draw on these when it goes above and beyond wherever you're at a moment. Grab a lifeline, grab a friend, get that support. Now, this is what that has. Having these friends and this support network is a lot like saving. It's a lot like gardening. You start planting and growing those seeds now, okay? So that in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, when you make that call, they'll say, "Sure, Sharita, come on over. I'd be happy to support you," or whatever it is. I'm going to go to my savings account. I can handle this emergency, or I can take advantage of this opportunity, or we can go to Disneyland. And guess what? We don't have to charge anything. We can go to Disneyland and we can contribute to your college fund. That's all it's all a process. Something I was thinking about in the last big crisis, the housing crisis. And growing up, and I didn't really fully realize how important this was, but to own your own home fully and outright, it takes roughly about 30 years. Okay, so you can buy the home, you can live in the home, you can be making payments on the home. The bank still owns it. It's yours. You control it as long as you're making those payments. But there really isn't any shortcut to that. Usually, having, let's say, 10 or 5 or 20% down, that's a good idea. That's been tested over 100 years. That formula works. Now, once in a while, nothing down, 2%, 1%, it works, but it may not be steady enough to overcome an enormous storm, maybe a usual storm. But if we run into a banking crisis, if we run into a Katrina, if we run into a 9/11, if we run into a COVID, everything is at risk, greater risk. And so my main point related to this was, if your expectation is like at 23 you should own a home, you're probably going to be disappointed. All right. Now, that isn't to say there aren't some 23-year-olds that may own a home or whatever it is, but it might take you 3 years, 5 years, 10 years to get the down payment, to then get control of the home, and then it's going to take whatever it is, 30 years of payments to own that home. Now, if you're really focused, you might be able to own that home in 15 years by making an extra $100 a month payment beyond what you're required to do. That's a family decision. And now, so it comes to this idea of prioritizing what's important to you. And often there are many things like, oh, I want to do 6 things. Yes, you have to make a choice or a decision. Maybe you can only do 1 or 3 or whatever it is. So yeah, anyways, main point is bring more mindfulness, more intention. If you're afraid, try and overcome your fear. Start with baby steps. Am I a saver or not a saver? Do I want my child, even if I'm not a saver, do I want my child to be a saver? There really isn't any reason for my child not to be a saver. I think, I'd be surprised, really surprised, if a person of any means was not able to find 1 penny for their child to save a week. All right. And now let me just say, if that's too hard, let's go to a month. But I'd prefer a penny a day, because it's making that cycle, that habit more frequently, which I think it's going to add more stickiness. You're going to be able to sustain and grow it from that foundation. But the next best thing would be once every other day, and then let's say once a week, once a month. But get it, if you get that consistency going, pretty soon you're going to say, you know what, I could probably do this twice a month, or whatever it is. You got to get started. You got to get started. Start somewhere. You may not be starting with the $100 bill. You're starting with the penny, whatever it is. Or maybe you're starting with a plastic water bottle that you throw away. All right, that might be 1/10 of a penny, or whatever it is. Those things are all over the place. Now, are you that creative? Is your heart filled with that much desire? These are things like little kids, especially young kids under 8 and 7. Man, oh yeah, they'll still follow you before the preteen age. So if you don't have them rooted in your values before preteen, it's really going to become like 5 or 10 times harder, because that's where, when we're in that middle school preteen, they're going to get shaken like a tree in a storm, and then you're going to see if your parenting is going to hold or stick or not, and they'll move through it, and to the next level, and then somewhere, maybe around, hopefully in their teens, but maybe when they're 24 or 25 or 30, they're going to say, mom and dad were right, or they were a lot smarter than I thought they were.
Yeah. Well, you gave me such a great idea. I'm really excited actually to start a savings jar. I mean, we have a piggy bank for our son, but something actually visual, the clear glass where he can see. Yes. And, especially at this age, like they can see the physical growth of the savings. Like they do get very excited about those things. So
they get excited.
Really excited. Yeah. It's going to be a fun project, and it definitely will be a great way to have a continual conversation and a great way to establish a habit. So I love that.
Awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
Sharita, 2 gold stars for you. 2 Sammy Gold stars for you. Yes, and a big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Big thumbs up.
Well, thank you so much. We're at time. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much. Your information is on my website. If you guys want to learn more about Sammy Rabbit, please visit. I know you're on Instagram. I know you're on LinkedIn. I want to say you have a Facebook page. Yes.
We do, but come to SammyRabbit.com. SammyRabbit.com. Everything is there. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk with you. But yes, visit us at SammyRabbit.com. That's why we invented Sammy, to help parents and teachers make these conversations easier and more enjoyable.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Have a Sammy-rific day, Sharita.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
All right, you too.